Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap here, of course, with the Trashman for another edition of the podcast. As Trashman silences his phone. Was that an important call coming in, Trashman?
It's my sister.
Okay. At least it wasn't somebody calling you to try and get like a medical collection or something like that, right?
Well, it might be in regards to that.
I guess who really knows these days. Man, I get these on basically half of the phone calls that I get nowadays, Trash Man. It just says potential spam. Yeah. There's so many of those. We got Michael Y in the chat saying, "What's up, man? What's up, Michael Y?" We probably should have put this on YouTube put this on Twitter so people would have known that we were on, but we'll just go through this. Trash Man, a couple things I wanted to get to with the Dynasty rankings that we talked about last week. There's going to be a big overhaul regarding, and we've started that, and you and I have gone back and forth and, kind of hammered out what we like, basically the top sort of 65-ish to look like. And this is where it starts getting really hard, and there's a bunch of weird sort of hairs to split as we work our way to 250. You can get really speed blind as you're doing this, and hopefully not forget anyone. So what I did was, of the players who we had not kind of had on our top 65 so far, what I went and did is just sort of went and looked at the, kind of age be damned, just kind of looking at the 2022 finishes of these guys in fantasy and which ones had, good finishes in 2022. That hadn't been ranked yet, because you start getting down here and you're like, there are good players that are still left that you can't really, at a certain point in time, you have to say, well, yeah, I know that Mike Williams is 29 years old. I know that Amari Cooper is 29 years old, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're worthless assets in Dynasty, right?
And you have to look at the position that the players, playing. Wide receivers, tight ends have a longer shelf life than a running back.
Yeah, and so I guess one of the main ones here, like we said, we're kind of basically looking at kind of six. I got this group of guys that is sort of 65 through 85-ish. And I just, like I said, I went through a process where I went and looked at sort of 2022 finishes, added the guys who finished at least relatively well in 2022. Then I also went and just looked at, which one of these guys are still young, who were at least somewhat good in 2022, that have some semblance of a role moving forward, and got them on there. So examples of that would be, guys like, A.J. Dillon and Brandon Ayuk, Cam Akers to some degree. That's an interesting conversation to have. He's only 24 with the resurgence that he had this year and the worries sort of being on the back burner about the Achilles. Another one would be Elijah Moore, who we saw, what did we see out of Elijah Moore this year? I mean, it's like some big games, but, definitely requested a trade at one point. The quarterback situation there was terrible. I'm not sure how much better it's going to get. Mike White did sort of turn into a pumpkin there at the end. It doesn't look like he's the great savior. I think that Gabriel Davis,
guys like Elijah Moore, we have to also then consider like Kadarius Toney, who's down there.
Okay, so I think we can bring Toney into the fold. He's just such a knucklehead. But so we'll bring Toney sort of into the fold here as part of the discussion. Younger running backs, guys like Tyler Algier, Isaiah Pacheco, dudes who you felt a little bit queasy getting into your lineup this year, but definitely some weeks you really needed in a dynasty type of setting, who are still pretty young.
Rondale Moore is another guy that's down there.
I'm not sure. I've thought about Rondale in this deal for the longest time, and I'm not going to wait on that, especially with this stuff with Kyler. And we'll talk about that stuff in a second with Cliff King. Well, do you want to talk about it now? So I want to start off. I wanted to start off
consciousness going.
Okay, I wanted to start off talking about David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, but whenever Michael Y, he wants to see you wear a fedora. I'm sure you have one, or more than one. I'll bet.
I don't have I don't know. It's something between a cowboy hat and a fedora, something.
Okay, so let's just. I want to talk about Montgomery
I
and
do
Khalil
have
Herbert
this.
because look at that little guy. I can't believe the people on the podcast can't see him. What is his name? He looks like the little dog from Men in Black, except that
It is.
dog's
It's a
beige.
pug. She's a pug.
What's her name?
Uchiko.
Uchiko, named after the restaurant here in Austin, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just talk about the Cardinals then, because Marquise Brown, I think we had him a little bit more sort of inside the top. Where do we have him? Yeah, so we have him, pretty. No, we don't. I had him in consideration here. You wanted Rondale Moore consideration here. I wonder, how do you feel about Cliff Kingsbury getting fired? What this does for Kyler, the organization's commitment to him. No more Steve Keim. Kyler did sign the long contract, but it feels like a disorganized mess around there. I'm not sure how much there I really want to buy into or be sort of staking my claim to as far as Dynasty. Whenever it feels like you never know when that guy could leave and go play baseball or something. Yeah,
right. But I mean, Marquise Brown has thrived in a situation where he hasn't had necessarily a quarterback who at least airs out and still, he's still been able to thrive. So I feel like Marquise Brown, I mean, he's a talented receiver. I feel like regardless of where he ends up with, or who he ends up with, I think he's definitely got upside.
Okay. I'm getting, for some reason, like a signal weakness thing here, Trashman. So if I start cutting out or something, make sure and let me know, okay? So we can take care of that and, make sure to edit it out. Are things okay right now?
Yeah, from where I'm sitting.
Okay.
Local recording should be able to mitigate that too.
Right. Okay. So regardless, with the situation there with Kyler, we have Kyler below Dak Prescott in the rankings, or we have them in the same sort of category. I was thinking that Kyler should probably be below Dak. What do you think about that idea?
No, I agree. Okay. It's just Kyler is. I feel like Dak is less prone because what we've seen with like Russell Wilson and what happened. He fell off a cliff this season. I feel like his body type, his athleticism. It's like Kyler's. It's like he's not that big a guy. So whenever his athleticism starts to taper off, we can see a season like this where I feel like Dak isn't subject to that as much, even though he is, a bit older than Murray. And he just has so many weapons and he's just on the better team, at least right now.
With Kyler, the thing with him is that, and I talked about it this year in these games whenever he was banged up, or I think it was a hamstring and stuff. And I was not only worried in those games with ranking him about his ability to hurt you with his legs and his ability to gain us fantasy points with his legs. Like that clearly was a big worry, right? That was a big worry. If Kyler's not going to run, that's a big, big worry because he's not, he's not going to be the prolific pocket passer that you want him to be. But I also worry about a lack of mobility because he's got to operate off platform. He can't stand behind those guys and throw. And we've just seen it with these short quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. It's almost like these guys are doomed to like not everybody can be a Drew Brees. You know what I mean? And I honestly think we're probably going to talk a lot about it this offseason with quarterbacks like Bryce Young, right? Who's maybe 6 feet tall, and people are going to talk about him like he's a lock to go, number one pick to, I guess not to the Texans anymore, but just a lock to be the first quarterback off the board. I think NFL teams are starting to kind of worry about these shorter guys. I'm a little bit worried about it too. I'm also worried about, just the whole coaching change stuff. I'm worried about just Kyler as a player. I've always been worried about his sort of mental makeup and the way that he's sort of perceived by his teammates. So with that, it's just, I think Dak should be ahead of him. But what I wanted to just Maybe we could just do this exercise real quick before we get into the breakdown that we're going to be doing of Jonathan Mingo, who I liked. I think you might like a little bit more than me, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. And so what about David Montgomery and vis-a-vis also Khalil Herbert, how close those guys should be in the rankings? Because, all right, so you have David Montgomery now, who next year is going to be 26 years old. There was the interview that he had after this last game where he got emotional and said that, yeah, this definitely feels, this is definitely definitely an emotional spot for me. I feel like I've been a good player for this team. I feel like I've been a hell of a player for this team. I still have a lot to prove, though. He wasn't talking like a guy that had substantial talks with Ryan Poles, or whose agent had substantial talks with Ryan Poles about his future there with the team. I know that in that article it referenced the fact that Spot Track said that he is probably, based on the contracts of these other guys, do somewhere in that same range of like Leonard Fournette. Probably on the open market, he'll command about $7.2 million per year. I don't know if that's something that the Chicago Bears are going to do, given so many other needs that they have, and the fact that Khalil Herbert is still there. They need to. They cannot look. What helps Justin Fields more? Like using those assets towards receiving weapons and other dynamic weapons on offense, or bringing back David Montgomery for 4 years, 7.2 per year, probably 20 million guaranteed out of that. Wouldn't you say? 30 million total, 20 million.
They need
guaranteed.
an offensive line more than any of those things. I would say.
Fine. But that's what I'm like. Still, man, these assets, these assets are these, they're fungible, right? Like whenever you take Montgomery out of the picture, that can go elsewhere. It can take care of other things. So I just wonder, given the replacement value of Khalil Herbert, who you already have on board for a rookie contract for another 2 seasons, what I don't think there might be much incentive to pay $7.2 million to David Montgomery. So with that said, now we have David Montgomery, who we project as light. So
especially since Fields is basically their starting running back,
Right. Well, but here's the other thing. Fields turns out he looks like he's pretty good. And there's going to be some spots wherever Chicago is going to be in scoring position. Khalil Herbert has showed that, he's a good, efficient running back. We also know what our good friend Matt Kelly always talks about, the Alfred Morris corollary. It doesn't always play out, but when you do have a quarterback that's so proficient with his own read stuff, who can make those defensive ends bite down, or make those defensive ends stay outside and not bite down as quick on that dive up the middle. It definitely, like Robert Griffin III helped Alfred Morris, a guy like Justin Fields could certainly help a hypothetical Khalil Herbert if that backfield's all his own. Now, what the Bears could do would be pick up a running back in day 3 of the NFL draft. I don't think that would zap Khalil Herbert. I think that we would still be thinking about Khalil Herbert, even in redraft, as probably a 7th round pick or something like that if there's no David Montgomery, maybe higher. So
I would think higher, but I don't know. I have a Khalil Herbert bias.
So Khalil Herbert is going to be 25. David Montgomery is going to be 26. David Montgomery, there's a chance that he's back with the Bears, which would nuke Khalil Herbert likely, because if he's back with the Bears, he's back on a $7.2 million deal, and they've committed to him for the future, right? On the other hand, with the Montgomery stuff, I think it's probably more like 60, 65% he's going to be gone. So on that side, Khalil Herbert now becomes, I think, more valuable than David Montgomery in a spot where we don't know where he's heading in free agency. Would you rather have a black box David Montgomery over a Khalil Herbert that knows with Justin Fields, if that scenario is indeed correct, given the complete lack of other options? And we know they're going to address other options in Chicago, but given currently the lack of other options, it feels like Khalil Herbert would Justin Herbert's the centerpiece, but it feels like Khalil Herbert would be some form of centerpiece, right?
He would, but then, he's not necessarily the goal line back in that situation.
Okay, so do you you like a David Montgomery who things are up in the air with 35% chance he comes back, is the lead dog. 65% chance he goes somewhere else, gets paid like he's a lead dog. But then all of a sudden, like even if he does and he goes off, it could be a Melvin Gordon where nobody wants to pay him that much.
Right. It could be. I mean, the thing is, I think we have to maybe look at, well, I don't know if we have to, but I mean, if you think about ECR as well, and where you can probably get Khalil Herbert and, you know, and relative to some of these other backs, some of the other players, I feel like maybe valuing David Montgomery a little bit more might be the shrewder thing to do.
Okay. Our boy Michael Y. I guess he's the. Oh, okay. So Michael Y. is the banana hammock boys commish. All right, he's got to drop out, but he wants us to talk about Chubb, Sutton, Godwin, Dameon Pierce, and Pollard. I'll say about those guys. None of those guys are in the discussion for the players that we're talking about right now, because all those guys we have in the top 65.
Dameon Pierce on another team on another offense.
Wait, do we have Sutton? No. So Sutton's not even in the top. So we need to move Sutton up here. Sutton is actually going to be 27 turning. Can you believe it? Time flies. 27 turning 28 this season.
Yeah. Was he a 25-year-old rookie?
By the end of let me just make sure that that's right. Cortland's. That was one that was. I'm not sure that I input that birth year. Let me see. Cortland Sutton. So he was born on October 10th, 1995. So do we have his 1995, 1995. Just make sure the formula is right. Yep. 28. He'll be 28. He'll turn 28 on October 10th of this season. I do think he kind of belongs in this conversation, though. So let's move him up just so as we're doing it, we can kind of go through that. So,
I mean, and Russell Wilson's going to be that quarterback for the Broncos this upcoming season. I mean, they're tied into that.
Do you like? Oh, yeah, for sure. But I mean, I like Michael Y was saying in the chat, like how much of that do you feel like has to do with Nathaniel Hackett? Maybe you can get a buy low on Sutton.
I don't know. I mean, Russell looked like a shadow of his former self.
Whenever I look at our slotting for Chris Godwin, I worry a little bit about it being low on him, sort of having him in the 40s here.
Was he 27?
He's 27. And I just don't know if this is a situation where there's no Tom Brady back next year and, you know, Mike Evans is still there. And if they're breaking in some kind of new quarterback, like, I don't really know how that whole thing's gonna go. I feel like I'm more interested in leaning into like the young running back there, and I think I might rather have Rachaad White in Dynasty.
I mean, the thing about Godwin I do like is the position that he plays. It's friendly, you know. It's young quarterback friendly. I mean,
but still, man, we've seen how these young quarterbacks can just tank these dudes. These guys can come in and be really, really bad that they take chances on. That offensive line isn't what it once was. You know, Leonard Fournette's getting older. I'm not exactly sure how things are going to go down there. And if that's going to be a Byron Leftwich offense without Tom Brady, boy, is the shine off of Byron Leftwich as an offensive mind, an offensive play caller, a guy who they wanted to, you know, shove into the Jacksonville Jaguars job. Can you imagine if they would have done that instead of Doug Peterson? I guarantee you they wouldn't be playing the Chargers this weekend in the wild card round.
I mean, the Bucs are in the playoffs. Is that because Cowboys this
is that because of Leftwich?
I don't
trash me. We know why they're in the playoffs.
I mean, you say it's arguably it's their defense. It's, you know, like their defense isn't as good as it has been.
Quarterback's the greatest player of all time. He's got really
Brady
good
hasn't
weapons.
been great this season either.
But he's been better down the stretch, and he's the best of all time, and he's got great weapons.
I mean, he is the best of all time, but I mean, we've seen like Aaron Rodgers is one of the best of all time. And
I understand. And Aaron Rodgers made a good run there at the end. What I'm trying to trash man. What I'm trying to say is, if Byron Leftwich did not have Tom Brady, like
we don't know. I mean, it's an unknown. I mean, what we do know is that Chris Godwin is one of the more talented receivers in the National Football League. He plays a position that isn't entirely dependent on a quarterback having a great arm.
Do you like a 27-year-old Chris Godwin more than a 21-year-old George Pickens?
Chris Godwin doesn't have the wear on his tires like some other 27-year-old receivers.
But you can't have him over George Pickens or Jameson Williams, right?
Well, Jameson Williams is still largely an unknown.
Here's what I know about Jameson Williams. He looks sick. Did you see the touchdown that got called back?
Yeah, but
last week?
He's still a largely unknown variable with a quarterback that we both have hated
Yeah, but with Goff, part of that is to see how Goff was really good this year. Goff.
No, he had an improvement this year, but then he also, Williams is also sharing that receiving core with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with a DJ Shark who had who improved over the course of the season.
Well, DJ Shark was only a 1-year deal, so we don't know if he's back. Okay.
To say that Jameson Williams should be over Chris Godwin, it's not, to me, that's not a given.
Well, how did you rank him? You put Godwin, you ranked him basically you ranked Jameson 3 spots ahead. So, we both think he's ahead. You're saying it's not, it's close. All these are close.
I just said it was, I said it's not a given.
To me, it feels like a given that you're going to have the guy that you took at the 1 point. Would you have traded? Would you have traded your 1.05 last year away for Chris Godwin? Even last year?
Yes. Do you remember how we used to talk about Chris Godwin? How fantasy used to regard Chris Godwin?
No, I get it, but I
get it. It's a "what have you done for me lately" type of. Well,
Godwin's been okay lately, but dude, what if there's no Brady? What if they're breaking a new quarterback? What if all this? But
Godwin was incredible before Brady was there.
As a young guy coming into the NFL, and he's going to be 27. If you think he's got 3 more good years, I think it's fine, and we could talk about moving him up. We can't move him up over. We can't move him up over guys like, the DJ Moores and the Traylon Burks and the Christian Watsons. I don't think.
Traylon Burks with also an iffy quarterback situation. And and that offense is.
Fuck Michael Y, man. He gets us onto the subject of Godwin. I wanted to talk about 65 through 85. We're almost out of the block where we're even allowed to talk about that. Well, here, all right. So Godwin, we'll go back and we'll discuss later, okay? But I think he's in the right bucket. I want I wanted to have these rookies that we took in the first round this year over Godwin. And if you don't think that that's right, maybe it's not right. I'll check some, I don't have time to go to any other, I need to go to some other sites and just see what the consensus is, right? Okay. But because I don't want to buck consensus and do anything too weird.
That's what I was doing when I made my initial rankings this morning.
Okay. Well, there's a little bit of that tinged in then, I guess. But without considering the consensus or whatever, tell me how you would rank these guys for Dynasty. David Montgomery, A.J. Dillon, Cam Akers, Ezekiel Elliott. 26-year-old Montgomery, 25-year-old A.J. Dillon, who is a teammate with Aaron Jones, who just signed a new contract. Cam Akers, who's 24 years old, who broke out to end this season and looks like he's over whatever messed with him. And Ezekiel Elliott, who's 28 this season, but might not have Tony Pollard for the next year or two if the Dallas does let him get away. Which we're kind of thinking in the rankings happens because we have Pollard a good ways up from here.
I feel like Elliott
is in first above Montgomery.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Why?
Why? I mean, we've seen he still has juice. He's still got such high scoring potential. And if Pollard isn't there, and he's healthy, I mean, he's.
How about we kind of do it like we do Montgomery? Give it a 65% chance that 65-35, 65 Pollard's gone, 35 that he's back. Do you still have Elliott over Montgomery or Cam Akers?
Yeah, I think he's a better back than both of those guys.
But this is Dynasty. We're talking about.
I know. I mean, we're talking about like if we're saying if Pollard isn't there, and if Elliott can still perform at one of the best offenses in the league.
And I guess it's important that people know too that whenever we do this stuff, whenever we're sort of projecting this, we're thinking about this in a 3-year window, a 2 to 3 year window, because that sort of that takes into account not only teams that are kind of rebuild. If we're going to be rebuilding, we want to be a short-term rebuild, or like Matt calls it, like a productive struggle, right? We don't want to just be a complete tanking team and just completely rebuild. And guys like Zeke, who you can get a little bit cheaper, can definitely help you in those kinds of teams.
I mean, I just think just considering the offense that he's on, and if he's there without Pollard, and I feel like he would have fallen off the cliff now. He's past the point where running backs generally do by now.
Okay. It's one guy that I might have fallen through the cracks of all of these guys is Gabriel Davis, because he's only going to be 24, and via,
Stefan Diggs situation.
That's so funny that you call him Stefan. Like, it sounds like such a fun. It sounds like a funny name. Stephon Diggs, yeah, he's 30. He's 30. So Gabe Davis connected for the foreseeable future to Josh Allen.
I mean, if Josh Allen is your number one quarterback,
it's almost like Gabe Davis should probably be ahead of 28-year-old Terry McLaurin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to move Gabe Davis up here.
Slightly. Yeah.
Okay. So he's somebody that's going to creep into that top kind of 58-ish. Top 50. No, top 58, 7, 58.
It's hard to believe Terry McLaurin's 28.
Yeah, man. Well, he was a little bit old whenever he came out. Remember?
Yeah.
Any of these others that you wanted to just hit on before, you never said who you liked, the order that you liked him in.
Zeke, Montgomery. I like Elliott first.
Yeah.
I like Montgomery, then Akers and Dillon.
And does Khalil Herbert fall into any of that with you? What about like I think Khalil
Herbert's a better back at this moment in his career than maybe all of them. But we're talking about the Chicago offense. We're talking about him potentially being behind Montgomery again. It's just, and the thing is, we're going to be able to change these throughout the offseason. I feel like it's not a dire situation to have Herbert, it's not going to be his final resting space. Is
it bad? Does Aaron Jones belong in a category that's above all these guys?
Was Aaron Jones 28?
He'll be 29. I'm not sure with the future of Aaron.
Well, Aaron Rodgers sounds like he's done.
His future is a little bit uncertain. I mean, how much do you love Aaron Jones and a Jordan Love offense, or AJ Dillon? To me, it's like I think in a vacuum. AJ Dillon's what, gonna be 25? Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that Aaron Jones should probably be in that bucket too. I'm not sure that we should consider Leonard Fournette in that bucket. I'm not sure we should consider a 27-year-old Deontay Foreman now in that bucket.
Well, Deontay Foreman, though, also, is one of these players who's come on later in his career and doesn't have the wear and tear of a normal 27-year-old starting running back.
What about it, like guys? Just finally, what about Isaiah Pacheco? What about Tyler Algier? Because Pacheco is going to be 23. Algier is going to be 20. Oh, Algier's only going to be 22.
You have to put those guys. I think you have to consider them guys above.
Above. Do you like Algier better than Pacheco?
At this moment.
So I'll just move him kind of up here so we can kind of have him up here, and we'll go through these and we'll rank them. Some of these guys, trash man. I think mainly Gabriel Davis, we're going to need to move up here to the area that we've already ranked. I think that was a little bit of an oversight by me and not including him in that first batch of 65. And you can check on that, versus consensus or whatever. Okay, let's talk about the Ole Miss wide receiver Jonathan Mingo. Excited to see him at the Senior Bowl. We'll have another podcast on maybe Thursday, Trashman, if you're available, and we'll go over at least Xavier Hutchinson, who I've been working on, who I really like. Not sure how much I like Mingo. There are plays out of him that I think are good.
I mean, just looking at, he's actually really, he was like, we were discussing this earlier. It's hard to comp because he really is kind of a unique player, at least build wise. And it's just like, and if you just watch him run and how smooth he is, but just how powerful he is, I think he could be really good in fantasy. I feel like, I wanted to compare him to like players who are already in the league, but I feel like he could be an Anquan Boldin type player in the NFL.
Anquan Boldin. Well, see, you didn't mention Anquan Boldin.
I know, because he's not. I don't even know if a lot of guys playing fantasy now even know who Anquan Boldin is.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's better to have that kind of comparison than just having to compare all these guys to DK Metcalf and Jamar Chase and stuff. We'll put this up on the screen. Thanks to Ole Miss Athletics for this. Maybe we'll see some routes and stuff out of Mingo, but you can at least see kind of his size and the shape of his body and the way that he looks. For people who can't see it, he is a stout guy, really big quads, strong arms, tall, fairly tall, but more just kind of thick, and sort of has that angular. He's got the angular body from the waist to the waist to the shoulders that reminds me a ton of Deebo Samuel from a body perspective. I don't think that he plays like Deebo Samuel.
I don't either. Some people have mentioned that comparison, but I didn't see the comparison in the way that they play. Well, and how they're utilized, at least.
Well, the way that they look, right? He just kind of looks like him, right? He's tough after catch, and the body just kind of looks the same.
He's bigger.
Yeah, he's bigger, right? But I just kind of mean the shape of the body, of the body. And he's really good yards after catch. And as you can see in some of these, they can use him in that short game, the low average depth of target stuff. And when he gets the ball in his hands, like, on these quick screens, he can get upfield. He can shed. I think he's going to be an exciting guy to watch at the Senior Bowl. I want to see how natural he is as a pass catcher and sort of what he looks like in that realm, because I think what his best attributes are his yards after catch. He's also a fairly young guy. He was for a 4-year college player, he's only going to be 22 in his rookie season. Pretty productive, 21% of team receptions this year, 28% of team receiving yards, 23% of team receiving touchdowns, for total production percentage of 24%. One of the things that I kind of thought about him was that, he didn't break out till he was a senior, right?
Yeah.
But he had to sit behind guys like DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and Elijah Moore, and just all these dudes. He was a second team all SEC guy this year. He was a Senior Bowl invite. And did you watch the Vanderbilt game?
No.
Well, shit. If you like him now, wait till you see that, man. Wait till you see that. It was what was it? 9 for 247. Just an absolute monster day. He broke Elijah Moore's record of 238. Elijah Moore broke the record against Vanderbilt as well. So, that's a bunch of good receivers that have been through Ole Miss. That's a good SEC school, especially lately. And to think that he had he's a guy who could take over a game unlike any of those dudes is pretty impressive. And now we have to consider the fact that if DK Metcalf and AJ Brown didn't have the other guy on the other side of them, one of them probably would have busted off like 300 at some point in one of these games, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that the dude can, it is Vanderbilt, but it's an SEC opponent. can take over football games. I like his size. I like his I like his yards after catch. I like the way that he navigates open space.
He's a real smoothie out there on the field.
It reminded me of N'Keal Harry when I looked at him. And
I feel
the
like,
size is about the same. I mean,
I feel like he's got more finesse than a Harry.
You're forgetting that Harry was good.
No, I know Harry was good, but I feel like Harry was more of like a kind of catch point guy, that's where he kind of did his damage.
My other was Bryan Edwards. And so those are my thoughts on him. What did you think? What are his best attributes? What is it that you like best?
Best attributes. He's got great play strength, wide catch radius. Like I said, he glides down the field, but he's got good contact balance. He's got excellent body control. He's a powerful dude who's got finesse to him, and he can use that power in his blocking too. He's a willing blocker. Basically, he's just like, I like the fact that he's such a big guy, a big, powerful guy, but who runs with finesse and and is a smooth player and is a smooth runner down the field.
Broken foot from what was that, 2021?
He does have an injury history.
Yeah. They say it's fine. I mean, I don't know. We'll see if we'll see how all that stuff checks out at the combine, but and we'll also see if the weight, height weight, 6'2", 225. I'm not sure if that's, he looks big. I mean, that's really big. I was looking at players to comp him with, and it's almost impossible to find guys. Yeah. Well, I mean, one guy you can comp to is N'Keal Harry.
Yeah.
Well, because here's the thing. I think you made a good point. He doesn't get up to speed fast, but man, once he gets going and he gets the head of steam, it's like that's when he's one of these guys that on the 40-yard dash, right? Yeah, I'll want to see what his 10-yard split is initially. I'll want to see what the flying 20 is, like the last 20 yards. Because that it feels like that's when he gets ahead of steam and gets going, he's kind of hard to catch, right? Whenever he's first just getting out of a break or he's first having a cut on, he doesn't necessarily explode out of there on a dime.
No, he's smooth.
Yeah, he's smooth. So you project him at a 4.56. I think he's probably more like a 4.5 even kind of guy. I think that's probably.
Well, I was trying to be conservative after that Rashid Rice thing is just.
Do you like? All right, so do you, tell them your comp for tell the people your comp for Jonathan Mingo.
I mean, my comp was DK Metcalf. If you're just talking about a player of that size, who's smooth down the field, and DK Metcalf,
you can't call him low DK Metcalf. He's not 4.33. Whenever we're taking these comps, we can't fastest, most freaky.
When do we see Metcalf's 4.3 speed?
What? Do you watch?
I just feel like it's rare that we see.
It's not. We see it all the time. If you watch these football games, you see his 4.3 speed all the time. He blows by corners. He gets wide open. I mean, don't you remember the interception return that he ran down?
No, DK Metcalf's incredible. I mean, I'm just saying it's hard for. I just don't think it's that much of a difference
between the speed of DK Metcalf and Jonathan Mingo.
Well, I'm talking about the speed. I'm talking about the play speed and how they look on the field.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to comp anybody to DK Metcalf that's not that big and projects to run that fast.
Well, I mean, it's really hard to find another comparable player for me for
Bryan Edwards.
But he's bigger than Bryan Edwards. He's
got 8-9 pounds.
He's got at least 10 pounds on him.
What was Bryan Edwards? Wasn't Bryan Edwards 218 or something to the combine? It's pretty close. He looks like Bryan Edwards. Bryan Edwards, big, strong.
Bryan Edwards to me
strong dude.
To me,
we saw that open field navigation.
Bryan Edwards seemed thinner than shrunk to me.
Oh well, fine. He's a lot like Bryan Edwards the way that he navigates in the open field.
And Bryan Edwards to me seems more like a technician. This guy seems like more of an athlete.
I understand. I mean, look, man, Brian Edwards was a beast in college. I know that he hasn't been one in the pros. Trashman, who do you like better? You have to choose one before the Senior Bowl. Is it Jonathan? Who do you have ranked pre-Senior Bowl higher, Jonathan Mingo or Rashay Rice?
I mean, I'm more excited about Mingo.